Just tell them that you do. Well, I thank you for your forgiveness.
Marcia Chapman was on her back, and she had large boulders on her thighs, up her shoulder, but one arm was free.
Jonaiki Martinez Estrella, who was facing murder charges in New York, was involved in a horrific crime that took place on the night of June 20th, 2018. Estrella, along with Manuel Rivera, Elvin Garcia, Jose Minez, and Antonio Santiago, brutally stabbed and killed 15-year-old Leandro Guzman Feliz. All five were members of a notorious Dominican gang known as the Trinitarios. Reports indicate that Leandro had left his Bronx apartment to meet a new friend just a few blocks away when four cars suddenly pulled up, marking the beginning of the tragic event. Mistaking him for a rival gang member, the cars began chasing Leandro, eventually cornering him near a local bodega. CCTV footage from inside the shop shows a desperate Leandro seeking refuge, frantically trying to hide behind the counter. However, he was soon spotted by one of the gang members. A scuffle ensued, and Leandro was forcibly dragged out of the bodega. What happened next shocked the entire city of New York. Armed with large knives and machetes, the five gang members took turns brutally stabbing the helpless teenager. They then fled the scene in getaway cars, leaving Leandro gravely injured. After the attack, a severely injured Leandro managed to re-enter the shop, seeking help, but was tragically sent away. Outside, fading fast, Leandro gestured towards onlookers, desperately trying to signal them to call 911. He then started running towards St. Barnabas Hospital, just a short block away, before collapsing at the entrance. Passers-by desperately tried to save Leandro, but shockingly, two police officers stood by, watching the scene unfold. They were later investigated for failing to intervene. Just 20 minutes later, Leandro succumbed to a fatal stab wound to his neck. Police soon obtained the CCTV footage and arrested the five suspects, charging them with first-degree murder.
Police have arrested the five suspects accused in the murder of this teenager in the Bronx.
At their trial, a sixth member of the Trinitarios gang, Kevin Alvarez, testified against the five murderers.
He's testifying in court against five of his fellow alleged Trinitarios gang members.
Alvarez, who had helped drag Leandro out of the bodega, identified the suspects in exchange for a lesser sentence on conspiracy charges. Eventually, the jury convicted the five gang members for the brutal murder of Leandro Guzman Feliz. At their sentencing, the killers showed no signs of remorse. Instead, they waved gang signs and shouted gang slogans. Jonaiki Estrella, who delivered the fatal blow, was sentenced to life without parole. Jose Minez, Elvin Garcia, and Antonio Santiago each received 25 years to life, while Manuel Rivera was sentenced to 23 years to life in prison. Leandro Guzman Feliz tragically lost his life for simply being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Diober Redden, a 30-year-old Nevada resident, is currently facing charges for attempted battery. He was arrested after allegedly attacking a man with a baseball bat. Redden pleaded guilty to the charges and now faces a potential prison sentence ranging from 1 to 4 years. During his sentencing, he had a calm and matter-of-fact exchange with Clark County District Judge Mary Kay Hus, highlighting the seriousness of the situation.
History, I feel that I shouldn't be sent to prison for a second time.
Have you looked at your criminal history? Have you looked at your criminal history?
I've actually just, I I looked at it.
I mean, you lived it, I
I
suppose.
just looked at it, yeah.
Yeah.
Judge Huss then reminded Redden of his criminal history.
You know,
3 felonies, a gross, 9 misdemeanors, multiple DVs. Got a lot going on, sir.
yeah, I just figured like,
Battery on a protected person, robberies, attempt home invasion.
Redden, who struggled with mental health issues like schizophrenia and bipolar disorder, tried to convince the judge that he deserved a second chance.
I feel like I shouldn't be sent to prison, but if it's appropriate for you, then you have to do what you have to do. But I figured that, you know, if I'm in a better place in my life, I'm not doing drugs, I'm not out there committing crimes now, you know, and I feel like I should be given a shot because I'm in a better place than I was.
But Judge Huss was having none of it.
I appreciate that, but I think it's time that he gets a taste of something else because I just can't with that history.
This is when things took a dramatic turn. Redden suddenly launched over the courtroom bench and charged straight toward Judge Huss. Eventually, deputies were able to restrain him. As alarms blared in the courtroom, chaos erupted, and people began calling for help.
That's affirmative. Medical is requested. Judge's chambers.
Yeah, be advised. 515's got a big laceration to his head. Judge hit her head into the wall, and I got an inmate that's bleeding up here.
It's going to be a positive transport to UFC for the marshal.
Be advised, I'm also going to need a biohazard cleanup for a lot of blood on the floor.
It was later revealed that Redden had allegedly punched Judge Huss and pulled out parts of her hair during the attack. One marshal suffered a forehead injury and a dislocated shoulder, requiring hospitalization and 25 stitches. Just a few days later, Redden appeared in court again, heavily shackled and wearing a spit mask for the sentencing of his initial assault case.
Good morning. All right, this is on for the continuation of Mr. Redden's sentencing. For purposes of the record, I want to make it clear that I am not changing or modifying the sentence I was in the process of imposing last week before I was interrupted by defendant's actions. All right, that being said, in accordance with the laws of the state of Nevada, this court does now sentence you in addition to the $25 administrative assessment fee, $150 DNA fee, the $3 DNA administrative assessment fee, and $250 indigent defense fee, 19 to 48 months in the Nevada Department of Corrections.
Additionally, Redden faced 13 new charges for the attack on Judge Huss, including attempted murder, battery, and extortion by threat. If convicted, he could spend decades in prison. Deobra Redden serves as a prime example of a convict acting out in court. However, as the saying goes, whatever a man can do, a woman can do better, as seen in the case of Melissa Hardwick. Hardwick was in Russell and Wayne County Family Court in Kentucky for a domestic violence hearing after her ex-husband filed a domestic violence order against her.
It's in your petition as part of your testimony, but I need you to tell me briefly, in your own words, what happened to cause you to ask for a domestic violence order.
Yes, Your Honor. Things have been escalating, I guess, since the first of the year, and Melissa's had a couple MIWs and a couple arrests, and she got out of jail in, I guess, April, and she started. We hadn't really had anything personal up until that point. She got out of jail in April.
He was explaining the situation when suddenly Melissa erupted.
My personal life is your business. It has nothing to do with
Miss Hardwick.
No.
You will be held in contempt of this court if you become disruptive.
I don't care. I haven't done anything to this court. I haven't done anything to him.
She will be arrested for contempt of the court.
It doesn't make any difference.
You will serve 10 days for contempt.
She was arrested for contempt and sentenced to 10 days in jail. This is when things got crazy.
Go now.
Melissa leapfrogged toward the judge, but thankfully court deputies stopped her just in time. However, that did not stop her from making verbal threats.
Get off of me!
Can't find back.
Wait and see. Get my bracelet off the floor.
Melissa faced additional criminal charges for her antics in the courtroom.
Have to be appointed to represent because she will be charged criminally for the threats that were made in open court today.
Eventually, Melissa was sentenced to 120 days in prison for her outburst. While Melissa Hardwick faced consequences for her antics in court, how does it compare to spitting on a judge, as in the case of 30-year-old Bass Webb? Webb was in court facing attempted murder charges. CCTV footage outside of Kentucky jail showed Webb, a former inmate who had spent 3 months there on assault charges, intentionally hitting 2 prison workers with his car. While one worker managed to dodge it, the other was not so lucky. Webb was arrested and brought to court before Judge Vanessa Dixon.
Yes.
Yes.
Since Judge Dixon knew the 2 jail employees beforehand, she decided to recuse herself from the case.
There's no way I'm going to try this case or have any further proceedings, or I have to see you for one further second.
But what Webb did next shocked the whole courtroom.
Set preliminary hearings next week.
Webb literally spat on Judge Dixon, clearly taking her by surprise.
Charge me.
After initially dismissing him, Judge Dixon brought Webb back, charged him, and threw him out of the courtroom. Nevertheless, this was not the end of Webb's defiance of the law. While awaiting trial, Webb started a riot with other inmates inside the Fayette County Detention Center. Webb was shot with beanbag bullets and even hit in the neck with a pepper ball. In retaliation, Webb swung a metal telephone box at a corrections officer. He was charged again for his actions and sentenced to 15 years in prison.
I will accept the jury's recommendation of 5 years on count 1, enhanced to 15 years pursuant to the persistent felony offender first degree.
Additionally, Webb was convicted of attempting to murder the 2 jail employees, receiving an additional 37 years. This brought his total prison sentence to 52 years. During this time, new evidence linked Webb to the unsolved murder of his ex-girlfriend, Bria Rowitz. While incarcerated, Webb bragged to a detective about murdering the 32-year-old to escape the death penalty. He pleaded guilty and received an additional 50 years in prison. As if that wasn't enough, 5 years later, another cold case resurfaced. This time, Webb was charged with the murder of another ex-girlfriend, Sabrina Vaughn. Webb appeared in court with a sinister tattoo on his head, which displayed a murder hit list of all the people he intended to kill, including all judges, prosecutors, cops, the media, and 3 rats who had been crossed out, among many others. Webb was convicted and sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 25 years.
You have found the defendant guilty of the offense of intentional murder.
While Bass Webb's audacious acts in the courtroom shocked everyone, how does it compare to elbowing your own lawyer, as seen in the case of Joseph Zeeler? Zeeler was a double murder suspect in Cape Coral, Florida. Back in May 1990, 11-year-old Robin Cornell and her babysitter, Lisa Story, were found assaulted and murdered at their home. The gruesome scene was discovered by Robin's mother, Jan Cornell, who immediately called 911.
911! There's someone in my house! Someone broke in my house! I think my daughter's dead! Oh my God! Nan, please just calm down with me. Oh my God!
The case went cold for over 2 decades until Zeeler was arrested in 2016 for shooting and injuring his son. His DNA was collected and entered into the database, which then matched the DNA evidence from the 1990 crime scene.
Now, Joseph Zeeler was actually arrested for another crime, and that's how detectives were able to get his fingerprints and DNA samples. His sample was put into a database called CODIS, and that database also stores unknown DNA samples, including those from the Cornell Story case. Now, when the system ran, that's when detectives got a hit linking Zeeler to this 26-year-old murder case.
Zeeler was further arrested and charged with capital murder. In court, the prosecutor sought the death penalty.
The kind of factors which makes what the defendant did to Robin Cornell and Lisa Story so grave, so serious, that death is the appropriate recommendation, that death is the appropriate sentence.
Zeeler then took the stand. He initially denied knowing both the victims and Jan.
Do you know Jan Cornell?
No, I don't know Jan Cornell.
Do you know Lisa Story?
No.
Do you know Robin Cornell?
No.
But later, he claimed his DNA was at the crime scene because he and John were involved in intimate acts the night before the murders.
And what I believe happened is I slept with Jan Cornell and Leanne Deller, and they were just too much of a pig not to wash their sheets.
He even called the victim's mother a pig.
Your DNA would have still been there 5 months later.
Yes.
And that's because they're pigs and they don't wash their sheets,
Exactly.
Right? You know that?
Well, I assume that. Just like you're assuming that
But just so the record's clear, when I said they're pigs and they wash their sheets, that's what you said.
Absolutely.
Zeeler then claimed that the prosecutor was framing him.
Well, the DNA witnesses, did you hear them say that they actually did retest NB32? That they actually took the sheet, recut another sample, and had another analyst do the same test? Did you hear that?
Yes.
So the retesting was done.
I believe FDLE is siding with the prosecution. Of course they're going to say that.
Eventually, the jury found Zeeler guilty of first-degree murder.
Verdict. We, the jury, find as follows as to count 1 of the charge. The defendant is guilty of first-degree murder of Robin Cornell. We, the jury, find as follows as to count 2 of the charge. The defendant is guilty of first-degree murder of Lisa Story.
But what Zeeler did next left the whole courtroom stunned. At his sentencing, Zeeler appeared in handcuffs. First, he asked his attorney for a private discussion.
What's that?
Which one? Right here. Come on.
As the attorney leaned in, Zeeler threw a cheap shot with his elbow. Thankfully, detectives quickly subdued him.
Relax. I'm calm.
Are you okay? I'm fine.
Relax. I'm calm. Relax.
Meanwhile, the lawyer saw the funny side of the incident.
I used to box. I've taken a lot better shots than that.
After the dust settled, it was time for Zeeler to learn his fate.
The court's review of other capital cases has led the court to conclude that the death penalty would be a proportionate sentence in this case. Therefore, the court concludes that under the laws of the state of Florida, the defendant has forfeited his right to live.
He was sentenced to the death penalty.
Accordingly, it is ordered and adjudged that the defendant, Joseph Adam Zeeler, is hereby sentenced to death for the murder of Robin Cornell and the murder of Lisa Story.
While Joseph Zeeler's attack on his defense seemed premeditated, how does it compare to punching someone out of the blue, like in the case of Christopher Teal? Teal was in the King County courtroom facing sexual assault charges in Seattle, Washington. Reports suggest that Teal, a homeless man, followed a woman into a restroom at a Volkswagen dealership and assaulted her. He was arrested after company employees barged in and stopped the attack. Teal was charged with first-degree sexual assault and unlawful imprisonment. He appeared in court for a competency hearing, represented by his lawyer Reed Birkland. As the hearing began, Teal seemed amused and raised his arm towards Birkland before being stopped by a court officer.
Mr. Teal's present, he's in custody, he's represented by counsel, Mr. Birkland.
Out of nowhere, Teal punched his own lawyer.
Standing from his counsel, who I'll defer to in a moment, that they are now stipulating that Mr.
Luckily, the police quickly managed to subdue him.
Put your hand behind your back now.
A spit hood was placed over Teal's head, and he was removed from the courtroom. Birkland was unharmed in the incident, barring his pride, and promptly withdrew from the case.
For Teal matter? No. Okay. I have a question though. Are you running a diminished capacity or insanity or anything of that nature?
I don't have anything to talk to you about.
The next time Teal appeared in court, the officers ensured he wouldn't be punching anyone. Teal was seen heavily strapped to a chair. However, he still had one complaint. Teal's biggest concern was how his hair looked in his mugshot.
I'd like to know where the they got that photo of me with my short hair. Because that was on Facebook, and I don't have a Facebook.
All right.
So you're on it. Legitimate question. Like, do they have access to Google?
The judge scheduled another hearing for a week's time. Eventually, Teal was sentenced to 8.5 years in prison. While Teal's reaction could certainly be dismissed as a mental health issue,